Welcome to WiseTake.com. This is CK013 bringing you another NBA DFS podcast. It's January 5th, 2017. It's a Thursday. Last night was probably the worst Boogie night you've ever seen. If you took Boogie, I'm sorry for you. I had a tiny bit of exposure just because of his 70, 80 point upside. But even though I figured he'd be kind of low owned, or at least more low owned than usual, I don't like taking big men on the back end of a back-to-back. Last night was the exact example of why. He couldn't hit a shot. He was getting out-rebounded. It's funny. A lot of people assume that when Whiteside's out, it's a good time to target opposing centers. Here's the thing about Whiteside. Whiteside is not good defensively. If you check at some of the numbers other centers have put up against Whiteside, I think you'd see that Boogie's matchup would have probably been better with Whiteside. Because the other guys are more in there like Willie Reed and Haslam. They're more there for their defense and rebounding, which they did last night, leaving Boogie to set a new floor of under 30, at least on FanDuel. He might have gotten above that on DraftKings, but under 30 on FanDuel. The only other times he's gotten 35 or less this season were against Memphis and 2 games against Utah, 2 of the better defensive teams and slower-paced teams in the league. So Boogie, I think if anything, he just proved last night that he's human. He's human. He's a human big man. And I won't ever take him on a back end of a back-to-back again. And I only took him in a couple lines. I had very low exposure. Still upset that I even did it because I knew he was going to bust. Anyway, moving on. We've got the first game today is Brooklyn at Indiana. Total 218.5. Indiana is favored by 10.5. Injury news. Lynn's out. Stuckey's out. Hollis Jefferson's expected to be out. On the Brooklyn side, Lopez is interesting for GPPs. I'm not crazy about him. He'll have a matchup against Turner, so I'm not exactly afraid. But I think there's probably other centers that I like a little more, and I don't think I want to pay up for Lopez's price per se. But Booker's interesting. I would say GPPs only. I personally don't think I'll play him too much. He's coming off a big emotional game against Utah, his former team. And I don't think I want to. He's been too inconsistent, especially trying to predict his minutes has been tough. So I don't know. I wouldn't trust him in cash for sure. Kilpatrick's the only other guy on Brooklyn that I think is interesting. And I actually do think he's interesting just because when I look at it, I think Paul George is obviously probably going to cover Bodon, I would imagine. Obviously, the center matchup, Thad Young on Booker, or whoever else plays the 4. So that leaves Teague on Whitehead, which Whitehead is he's just not a producer. Now, he was in college. Don't get me wrong. I watched him at Seton Hall. So I think eventually when he's comfortable, when teams have more confidence in him, when he has a little more confidence, he could do some stuff. But right now, I don't think so. So it almost seems sort of like a funnel spot sort of for Kilpatrick. I don't know for sure about that because if Booker schools Thad Young or some other 4 schools Thad Young, that could change everything up. But if Teague's covering Whitehead, the way I see it, either Teague or Robinson is going to cover Kilpatrick, and neither of them I'm afraid of defensively. So Lopez and Kilpatrick are probably the only 2 guys that I'm even remotely interested in. And again, Lopez I'm not crazy about. Not that I'm crazy about Kilpatrick, but I think I might like Kilpatrick a little more just because it's cheaper. And looking at Lopez's price, he's pretty scoring dependent, considering most big men usually get a good amount of rebounds and all that. But he never really gets double-digit rebounds. Sometimes you can bank on his assists. He's played 2 games under 30 in a row. Not minutes, I'm talking about FanDuel points. So it's tough, you don't really have you don't have too much defense. You got some blocks once in a while, but even that's not consistent enough to count on. But anyway, we're spending too much time on this. So on the Indiana side, Turner's a good price, so he's interesting to me. Anytime he's priced like that, he's a good projection play. Paul George is in a great spot. I'm just concerned that he might be a little chalky for GPPs. In cash, I don't see why you wouldn't. He's coming off a pretty big game, and his upside has been limited this year. So his price, believe it or not, in my opinion, may be a little overbearing. 7,900. He's in a great spot. He's coming off a game where he played 36 minutes, put up 44 points. But that was pretty much a ceiling this season. I think 40. He hasn't really gotten high. Well, he's got 51 once against Portland. So he's got it. So maybe in cash, the problem is Brooklyn is not a good defensive team, so I'm looking around and there's just too many guys that could score. T could score, Thad Young could score, Turner could score. So I don't know if they'll be as reliant on Paul George to score because the defense is so bad. But obviously, you can't. When it comes to matchups, he's in a great spot. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson is out. Not that his defense is good or anything, but Bogdanovich is supposed to cover him, I think, for most of that. Who else is going to play? Karis LeVert, maybe. I don't even know. I don't even know where he's playing. But yeah, so the 10.5 point spread might scare me off a little bit just because I know how bad Brooklyn can be. Then again, Indiana, I don't think is that great of a team either. So, you make that call. Teague is in a good spot. Thaddeus Young is in a decent spot. So they're all in play there. Obviously, as you can see, it makes sense. Indiana's favored by 10.5, and I like more players from Indiana. So it just kind of makes sense. They're home, favored by 10.5. You can kind of see why they're favored by so much. It seems like they have more players that are in better spots. Moving on, we have Utah at Toronto, 202.5 total. Toronto's favored by 5.5. Injury news: Hill's expected to miss. Exum is questionable, and Patrick Patterson is also questionable. This is actually a chance for Utah to get some revenge. I think on December 23rd, these two teams met in Utah, and Toronto was able to walk away with the win that day. Kyle Lowry had a monster game that day. And it's a similar situation. Utah did have Favors, but he only played like 15 minutes, so he's playing a little bit more, so we'll see what happens there. On the Utah side, like Gordon Hayward, I think out of everybody on Utah, he's obviously in the best spot. I'm not afraid of DeRozan or anybody else defending him because Hayward is a scorer. That's what he does. So I think in GPPs, Hayward might be a good pivot from Paul George. They're similar in price. I haven't really looked at the whole slate yet, but just off the top of my head, I think I like Hayward. He didn't have a monstrous game the last time they played, don't get me wrong. And now Favors is going to play more minutes, so that could even take away from some of his production. But they're going to want revenge here. I watched some highlights of the last time these guys played back in December, and it was just jump shot city. Both teams were having a problem getting to the hole, and it just looked like constant jump shots. So if that's how it's going to be this time, I want to stick with my jump shot guys. So I like Hayward from Utah. He's probably my favorite guy in Utah. The only other two guys that I'm somewhat interested in, Gobert I'm interested because of rebounds. Now, again, Favors is playing more minutes, supposedly. I don't know what he's going to play. You don't really know what they're going to do with him. But I know from what I've seen, his minutes they were conservative, but he just played 29 minutes. Before that, he played 18. Before that, 24 and 25 and 22. So his minutes are definitely up. And he had a day off. It is a 3-4, so you don't know what they're going to do. This is a 3-4 for Utah. So you don't know exactly what they're going to do with Favors. But if he doesn't play, even better for Hayward. Gobert. Hayward too, I guess, but really Gobert. That's the main guy because last time these guys played, let me just take a look real quick. Gobert. I just want to check his FanDuel logs here. Toronto, 32.3 FanDuel points in 35 minutes and 14 rebounds. The guy is a rebounding machine. And even with Favors back, his rebounds haven't dipped too much. So he's still in play if you want to take a shot. That's really why I like him, to be honest. It's not so much for his scoring. Not that I'm afraid of Valanciunas. He could probably score at will. I just think Favors might take away from some of those points from him when Favors is on the court. On top of that, I think Hayward's going to be their main scoring option. But I mean, he gets a lot of rebounds. So a double-double is not too hard for Gobert. He does it nightly. He only needs his 10 points, and he gets his rebounds are always there. I'm looking at his game log, and I see 2 games since November 14th that his rebounds were less than double digits. That's it. I don't even know if that's right. Did I just mess that up? No, 2 games. Denver, he played 26 minutes. This is December. This is November 23rd. He played at home against Denver. He played on the road in Denver. It was a home and home. So on the road in Denver, he played 26 minutes, 7 rebounds, and then on the 14th of November against Memphis, 22 minutes, 5 rebounds. Other than that, he's gotten double-digit rebounds in every game. So in a game with a lot of jump shooting and pretty good defense, you got to figure there's going to be a lot of misses. So I like Gobert to get all those rebounds. I really do. The spread is somewhat close. Now, I know the total's low at 202.5. It's actually higher than it was when they played in Utah. And the thing about this game is that you kind of know where the production is coming from. So even though the total's low, I think some of these players' usage rates are high enough to where it doesn't really matter. So, for instance, matter of fact, let's just talk about Toronto first. I'll talk about Toronto first, and then I'll go a little more into it. Um, in GPPs, now I don't know about cash. I got to do more research. In GPPs, Lowry and DeRozan are very interesting to me. The reason is what I just said. You know where the production's coming from. They're playing a good defensive team. If they're playing a good defensive team, they're going to rely heavily on their producers. They have two main producers, Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan. Lowry's coming off probably his worst game of the season against San Antonio. Meanwhile, the last time he played Utah, he had one of the best games of his season. He had over 30 points. At the time, that was a season high. I don't know if he's done anything higher than that. Yeah, against the Lakers, he had 41. But before that Laker game, he had 36 points, 48.3 FanDuel points. He's been as consistent as you could ask for. He finally had a bad game. I firmly like Lowry at 8,100. I think people will shy away. I don't know for sure, but I think they'll shy away from Lowry just because of his price tag at 8,100. I'm sorry. That's not even what I meant. I mean, because of his opponent. I think people would more likely gravitate towards Kemba Walker, who on FanDuel is the same price. They're both at 8,100. So I think Lowry, if he goes under owned, you got to figure it out. Do some research. See if you can figure it out. If Lowry's going to be low owned, I think he's a great tournament option. I may put these two in cash. I don't know for sure. It might sound crazy. But you see what I'm saying? I know that the total isn't so high. It's one of the lower totals in the game. So that's what I'm thinking people are not going to target this game. Nobody likes to target guys against Utah. But the last time they played, they both had decent games. DeRozan didn't do great, but he had 38. But DeRozan shot 24 shots in that game. So, and he didn't shoot that great from the field. So now he's home. Granted, he's home. I'm expecting a good game. But keep in mind, they were just on a long road trip. They were all over the West Coast, and they had one day off, and now they're playing at home. So a lot of times, if you notice, and this is something I picked up years ago, in baseball and basketball, obviously not football because they have a full week to prepare, but in sports like football and baseball and basketball, for example. Think about this: if you're a family man, you have a family. Say you're, I don't know if you're a parent, husband, wife, whatever you are. If you leave for, at least a week, maybe even more on these long road trips, and you're not seeing the family, not seeing the kids, and then you're home, you have that one day off. Like, do you have any idea what you probably missed in that week? Such and such has a problem at school, such and such has an event you need to go to, there's a concert here, the kids miss you, do something with the kids. They got all these things coming back in their life. They're humans. They got lives outside of basketball. So it's been tough to take teams, in my opinion, their first game back home after a road trip. Now, if a team gets 2 or 3 days off, I don't think it's as big a deal. But they've had one day off, and they just played a long, grueling road trip on the West Coast. So it's something to keep in mind. With that said, I do like Lowry and DeRozan and GPPs. I got to do more research, but I think they're interesting. I definitely think Lowry, I don't know for sure, but I think DeRozan would definitely go overlooked. He's 8,300. He's more expensive. On top of that, we got Harden going tonight. CJ McCollum, who just had a monster game. Batum. So I think that I don't see why they would pay for DeRozan against Utah. I feel like they'll go either up to Harden or they'll go to McCollum or lower. I just don't see why they'll take Toronto. And I think that DeRozan is going to be relied upon heavily. If Gordon Hayward covers him, which happened last time, I think DeRozan and Hayward were on each other. And they both had decent games. I mean, it wasn't great, but decent. So I like DeRozan, and I know a lot of people hate DeRozan. I get it. It's fine. But I like DeRozan. I like Lowry. I got to do more research. I may put them in cash just because their production is there. I would rather have just a different example, if you can understand what I mean. I'd rather have 30 minutes of one guy shooting all by himself on the court than have 60 minutes of 5 guys. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say 60. Maybe 45 minutes of guys passing around. Does that make sense? Probably not. I know. Probably doesn't make any sense. I'm not good at explaining things like that, but I think they're interesting. Obviously, as you can tell, I kind of like this game. Other than that, We're gonna move on. Charlotte at Detroit, 205.5 total. Detroit's favored by 3.5 to 4, depending on where you're looking. Zeller is expected to be out as of now, but I heard earlier. I think somebody else may have said something about him being questionable. I think he passed concussion protocol, so he may play. So he might get upgraded to questionable. I don't know. Baines is out, so Drummond's gonna get all the playing time. Let me see. It looks like Charlotte. Yeah, Charlotte played last night. Kemba had a good game against Westbrook. Batum had a good game. Yesterday, if you talked to me, I was big on fading Kemba. I don't think that it hurt you. I don't think, obviously, Kemba wasn't the guy you had to have to win a tournament. Westbrook was that guy. Westbrook put up 60, and I said he was in play. But once again, I think I'm fading Kemba in this spot. Well, you know what? I don't know if I could do that. I want to. He's on the road, and everybody's obviously well aware of his road splits, home and road splits. He's way better at home, if you didn't know. But I'm assuming you did. But the thing is, KCP, Contavious Caldwell-Pope for Detroit, is actually a pretty good defender. So if he's on Batum, and he's going to work his best to... When I say good defender, everybody knows Jeff Teague has been playing pretty well. He's a pretty good point guard. When KCP covered... Once they had KCP covered Teague, Teague didn't do anything. He shut Teague down. A red-hot Teague shut him down. So KCP, I'm not saying he's like an elite defender, but he's pretty good. So if he's going to cover Batum, I'm assuming he's going to cover Batum. Then that would kind of funnel all the action to either MKG or Kemba. I don't know. I don't like taking... Kemba's been good. You know, 2 games in a row, he did well. And don't get me wrong, I like Kemba. You know, in college basketball, I'm a New York guy, New York, New Jersey guy, so I root for St. John's. But I like UConn. They come to the Garden a lot. They're on TV a lot around here, so I've always liked UConn. I watched Kemba in the tournament that year when he led his team, when nobody thought UConn would go anywhere, and he led his team. I like Kemba. I don't want you to think I don't like him. I do. I just only like him in certain spots, and I like him when nobody else likes him. And now in cash games, if you want to take a shot on Kemba, he's been consistent. He's got a matchup against Reggie Jackson, which I'm not afraid of. So maybe in cash, Kemba would be better than Lowry, but in GPPs, I still like Lowry better. But Batum is interesting. Originally, I wrote he had a good matchup. I completely forgot about KCP's, but if KCP's on him, his matchup might not be so good. Still, it's Batum. You kind of know what you're going to get. He's got a pretty high floor. His ceiling isn't as high as maybe you'd like with Kemba in the game. If there's ever a game where Kemba's at, I tell you what, load up on him. But the only other guy from Charlotte that I'm interested in is Kaminsky, and that's because Detroit's been so bad against stretch fours. A little concerned about Kaminsky playing last night. I think he played a good amount of minutes. He did well last night. I think he got 30 FanDuel, 31 points, 2 FanDuel points. He played 24 minutes, 17 points. So my concern here is Kaminsky is he could be pretty reliant on shooting. Don't get me wrong, he gets rebounds and all that, but he doesn't have enough minutes to get like double-digit rebounds, etc. So you're kind of relying on a shooting here, and it's tough for shooters to have 2 good shooting games in a row. He's coming up a 17-point game. If there's anybody from besides Kemba and Batum, Kaminsky's the only other guy I like. Like I said, Detroit struggles against power fours. His price is stretch fours. His price is very attractive at 4,000. I don't think it'll hurt you if you take a shot on him. So he's interesting in both formats, honestly, in my opinion. But not really a cash game guy. I mean, I play them, but you know. Anyway, on the Detroit side, I think Reggie Jackson's okay, but I don't love him. Tobias Harris has been playing very well, and I think his price might have came back below that 6,000 mark. Yeah, 5,900 on FanDuel. Not crazy about him here, but I mean the guy's been consistent. If you're looking for around that 30 points, you're pretty much gonna get that 30. It might not be good enough to pay out his value, but lately 30 has been doable for him. His minutes, okay, at least 30, sometimes 38, sometimes 35. So I think he's in an interesting spot here. Don't mind him at all. And Drummond. If Zeller is out, Drummond even more. There's really going to be nobody down there to stop him. I mean, I'm looking over at, you got Spencer Hawes, Roy Hibbert. So I don't know. I mean, Zeller, in my opinion, is better defensively than both of those guys. So if Zeller's out and Drummond's playing, and we already think that Baines might miss, he's questionable. If Baines is out, that's all the minutes for Drummond. And then if Zeller's out, there's nobody to defend Drummond. So I think Drummond could be in a great spot. He's priced up at 7,900. I don't know if you have to go there today. There's a center I'll talk about later that I really like, but he's certainly in play though. You can't ignore that. Let me see here. We are going to move on to, oh yeah, this is probably going to be everybody's favorite game of the night. Oklahoma City at Houston, 225 total. Houston's favored by about 8.5. Beverly is probable, and the Capella is obviously out. This game is on TV. I think it's on TNT, and it features two former teammates, James Harden, Russell Westbrook. We've seen them play before, and we saw some magical fantasy things happen. Let me see if I could find a log from the last time Harden played Westbrook. I'm going to look now. I got the game log pulled up. Yeah, OKC. Harden had 45.8, and that was at OKC. I don't see how Harden puts up any less than 50. I think Harden could put up another one of those crazy, ridiculous 70, 80, 90-point games. He's going to get up. He's going to get up for Westbrook. Certainly like Harden more than Westbrook. But before I talk about that, let's talk about Oklahoma City. Westbrook's certainly in play. I personally think I'm off. He won people tournaments last night, so people who didn't play him are going to be like, oh, I got to play Westbrook. And they're going to hop on Westbrook. But Beverly's supposed to play. And Beverly's going to get a lot of minutes playing against him, I assume. He had some days off with that wrist injury. So I'm not crazy about a guy who just had a great game and now has a horrible matchup against the Rockets' best defender. So, guys I do like for Oklahoma, I'm not telling you not to play him. He's always in play. I will never say Westbrook is not in play. All I'm saying is I'm not playing him. That's all I'm saying. I like Oladipo. Adams and Cantor, they're both maybes here. It depends on which one of them is going to play. Whoever has the better game is going to be on the court. I think Cantor, obviously, he does a good job running that second unit. But Adams, I'm a little concerned with Oladipo back because Oladipo's going to soak it up. So, I'm not crazy about him. And even at their prices, if I'm going to punt that position, there's other guys I like better. So I'm not too crazy about either of them. On the Houston side, I think this is number one, I think it's a Harden crush spot. I said that before. I do. I think it's a Harden crush spot. I like Beverly here. I think his price is a little high at 5,900. I mean, the guy doesn't break 30 all that often. So I was a little disappointed to see that price hike. Still like him, though. The reason I like him is because I think he's going to get mega minutes because Westbrook is going to be playing mega minutes. And they want Beverly to stay on Westbrook. So I don't know. The last time they played, I don't know if Beverly played. Let me check that right now, as a matter of fact. See if I can find if he did play. He played 32 minutes. He didn't really score, but he had a lot of rebounds, surprisingly. I think he had like 12 rebounds. Yeah, 12 rebounds. That's pretty crazy. But he had 28.9 points, and that was without scoring. So now he's at home. He might score a little bit. He's had some time off. I think his upside is there. He showed us against Phoenix. He put up 42.3, so he's got some upside. Normally I love Beverly in cash when he's super cheap, but 59, that price is a little steep, so I don't know exactly where I'm going to go there. But I do like Beverly. Who else? Anderson's in a pretty good spot here. Sabonis, Cantor, some of the power forward. I don't see them really being able to stop Anderson from scoring. He's at home, so he's going to chuck some threes. I just don't see it. Gordon is obviously interesting. I always like Gordon. 5,800. You know what you're kind of going to get from him. He pretty much runs the entire second unit. He's usually pretty safe. He's at the floor of about 20, and he's got some upside to get you close to 40. So you know what you're going to get with Gordon. I like Gordon. I always like Gordon. Not saying he's my favorite guy, but I like him. But obviously my favorite guy from this game, just like probably you, is James Harden at 12,000. So I do have some concern of the blowout here, and the reason is because the Rockets don't play defense, I know, but Westbrook did play last night, so I'm a little concerned about, some of those guys being tired and just chucking up shots they shouldn't be taking. So a little concern there, but overall, I think Harden's probably the safest bet tonight. Because even in a blowout, he could still get his 50. We've seen him do that numerous times. Before the game gets out of hand in 3 quarters, he puts up 50, 55. So if there's anybody in this game I like, it's Harden. And I like the game. Moving on, we've got Atlanta at New Orleans, 205.5 total. New Orleans favored by 2.5 to 3, depending on where you look. I didn't really see any injuries as far as I saw. Atlanta played last night. Normally, I would say this is a great spot for Howard, but again, I don't like playing bigs on the back end of a back-to-back, especially not an injury-prone guy like Howard. I think Millsap is in a decent spot. I know he's a big man, but he's a little different. He's a little more mobile, a little more athletic. So I do like him. I like Millsap. New Orleans also struggles against power forwards. Anthony Davis has been playing center a lot. So, Howard might have his hands full there. I think that'll leave opportunities for Millsap because now I would assume that they'll play Ajanko, one of their other big guys, because Millsap is a pretty big guy. So they're going to need him. If they're going to have Millsap and Howard on the court, then New Orleans are going to have to follow that up and put, 2 other guys. And Millsap is a significant part of their team as of now. I heard reports they might be trying to trade him, but as of now, it's a significant part of the team. Dabo, he's interesting. I don't like him too much just because he's more known for his defense, and there's no small forward defensive threat on New Orleans. It's just Anthony Davis, so I think Bazemore might get more run. Bazemore maybe. Schroeder maybe. I don't think so. But GPPs, I guess, for low ownership. But Drew Holiday's been playing pretty well. On the flip side, I like Drew Holiday. I was on him against Cleveland. He had a good game. 7,200. He's a great matchup. He's had 2 games in a row above 35. 38.3 and then 37.3. I love Drew Holiday here. I think that his minutes have been super high, well over 30 minutes, mid-30s. He's playing against a point guard that is one of the worst defensive point guards in the league. Atlanta's terrible against point guards. I love targeting point guards against them. Holiday's probably my favorite guy in this entire game. Buddy Hield is interesting as if you can find whichever shooting guard is going to get the playing time, they could be interesting. Atlanta struggles against shooting guards, so if you could find one, Evans, if he got more minutes, I'd go with him, but I think he's only getting 15 to 18 minutes, so GPP's only for him. But yeah, Anthony Davis obviously in play. I wouldn't put him in cash. He's too injury prone. You don't know what's going to happen. But and GPP's is certainly in play. Not my favorite place to go, but I might have a little exposure. You kind of have to. Anyway, Phoenix at Dallas, 204.5. Dallas favored by 5. Brandon Knight is questionable. Barea is supposed to be out. And Bogut, I think, is probable. So they get their big man back. On the Phoenix side, I think Booker's interesting in GPPs only. He's too inconsistent for me to play in cash. TJ Warren, only if Barnes doesn't have to cover him. Now, if Dirk Nowitzki plays, then that means Barnes is going to play the 3, which means Warren's going to be covered by him. If that's the case, I don't think I'm too crazy. Barnes is a pretty good defender, but Warren is interesting. He's cheap. He seems to be on an every other game pattern, which would mean that he's kind of due today. But I'm not going to have too much exposure. I'll be honest. I'm not going to have too much exposure at all. I think, especially at his price, I'd rather pay up for Gordon or pay down for MKG or something like that. So I don't even think I talked about MKG, but he's definitely in play. Bellinelli's on restricted minutes. So going back to the Charlotte game, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, I still love him. I've been playing him I don't know how long consistently. He did good for me again last night. Definitely in play. Anyway. My favorite guy Bledsoe. Bledsoe's in a decent spot. He's okay. I'm not crazy about him against Williams. If anything, I might like Williams a little bit more than I like Bledsoe. But at Bledsoe's price, the matchup's not too appealing. I'm not crazy about it. The guy I really like in this game, and you can laugh if you want. You can torment me on Twitter if you want. But Tyson Chandler. 5,000. He's a rebounding machine. Now, if Bogut's back, it puts a little bit of a damper in there. Obviously, Bogut's a very large guy. But we got some narrative street. Tyson Chandler going back to the Mavericks, where he won, where he became a world champion. So he'll be in Dallas, and I think Tyson Chandler, for those of you who don't know him, I know him because I'm a Knicks fan, so I watched him a bunch of years on the Knicks. He is a super emotional dude. He plays with so much emotion. He's very similar to Joakim Noah, not in playing style, nothing like that, but as far as emotions kind of run how he's going to do. If he's all pumped up and hop up, he could be so much better than than he seems most of the time. We saw him look against New York. He played his old team, New York. He played 41 minutes, 23 rebounds, 42.6 FanDuel points. So I think he can have a similar game. He's coming off a pretty good game already, which kind of worries me. But the worst part about it is this is going to be a 3-4 for them. So you got to worry about them not being able to keep it close. But I like Tyson Chandler. He's really the only guy from Phoenix that I really, really like. On the Dallas side, I love Barnes. He's probably my favorite play for Dallas. He's good defensively. He's playing a fast-paced, bad team, so I'm assuming he should get a decent amount of turnovers, and that'd be great because turnovers, a lot of value right there. Williams is Darren Williams in a good matchup, so he's interesting, but his upside hasn't really been there. Wesley Matthews is in a pretty good spot. I'm not afraid of Booker, but he just kind of Wesley Matthews, man. He plays all the minutes in the world, so he's a great cash game guy usually, but he doesn't do anything with them. I mean, he's not bad, Wesley Matthews. 5,500 is not going to kill you, but I think like if he puts up 30, if you have a 30-point game with him, that's pretty much your ceiling with him, and you should be very happy with that. So if Dirk plays, it's an interesting spot. He's been getting more minutes lately. When I say more minutes, it's still only like 24, 25, but it's better than the 15 to 18, whatever he was getting. So I know he was sick. If he does play, I don't see who stops him, because if Bo gets back, they would put Dirk at the 4, put Barnes at the 3, Matthews at the 2, Williams at the 1. If that's the case, you're talking about Bogut and Chandler pairing up, either Chris or whichever power forward they put out there against Dirk. None of their power forwards can stop Dirk. Power forwards is one of the best spots to target Phoenix against. So if Dirk plays, now this is GPPs only because you don't know how much he's going to play, but he's cheap enough to where I don't think he'll kill you. So I do like Dirk a little bit, but my favorite two guys in this entire game are Barnes and Chandler. And that could be a hot take, whatever you want, but I'm going to have a lot of exposure to Chandler. I think he gets up for this game. If I get burnt, I get burnt. I'm willing to live with it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just got to let it ride. Missing my other sheet here. Hang on one second here. Did do my research. Try to be as prepared as possible. Here we go. So, we got the Lakers at Portland. 214 total. Lakers favored by 3. Lillard is questionable. Nance is out. And Luol Deng is doubtful. That's interesting. D'Angelo Russell's in a pretty good spot, especially, with or without Lillard, to be honest. But here's the reason that I think it's better without Lillard. If it's without Lillard, you have, he's playing against McCollum, who I think had a monster game last night, and very emotional, high-intensity game. I don't think McCollum gets up again. And I think McCollum might be a little tired. I think that, if anything, this is a good spot to capitalize with Russell, who is a little more rested. Let me see exactly what McCollum did. I know he had a monster game. 52.3 points. Before that, 58.5. But he had some days off. He had 3 days off in between that. He's been playing mega minutes, so I'm never going to tell you not to go with McCollum. But I like Russell. Anyway, let me do this the right way, right? So if Lillard plays, I do like Lillard, because he's the most rested of anybody on that team. If Lillard doesn't play, McCollum's in play, but I'll probably be off of him after that game last night. He played mega minutes, very emotional game. He played great. Good job, McCollum, but I think I'm off you. Plumlee, I think, is in a good spot here. I don't like taking bigs in the back end of a back-to-back, but still, I can't deny the spot he's in. He's in a very good spot. And you got to get some exposure to this game somehow, because that total is so high that you're going to want it. Oh, and yeah, I know. I realized that I skipped Sacramento at Denver. Don't worry, I have it on here. I'm going to talk about that next. But yeah, I think Plumlee's in a decent spot. With Deng out, Harkless and Turner are in great spots. If you could figure out which one's gonna be able to have the big game, they're both in very good spots. They're priced very similarly. But I think that means we're going to have Brandon Ingram defense, and I am not afraid of him. Don't get me wrong. If you're looking for a punt, Ingram's actually okay, in my opinion. I think he's okay. My problem with him is he hasn't been producing. He doesn't do much. He's been getting the minutes, 25, 26. He should see a good amount of minutes. The last time against Cleveland, he had the best game of his career. 41 minutes, and he put up 32.5 FanDuel points. If he's gonna get 30-something minutes, close to 40 minutes with Deng out, he could do something similar. Now Turner's a pretty good defender. Harkless I don't think is. So depending on the matchup, but it's a way to go. Now Deng I think is seen as a game time decision, but I read that he was. I know he didn't practice Wednesday, so I read he was doubtful. So we'll see what happens there. But if Deng plays, by all means, he's in play. But Ingram is $1,000 cheaper. If Deng don't play, Ingram is definitely, in my opinion, in play. Just because even though he doesn't produce, he should still be able to hit his price. So that's what I'm thinking there. Going back to D'Angelo Russell, I think he's in a great spot. Julius Randle's in a good spot. He's coming off a monster game, 50-plus fantasy points. I get a little concerned that I know sometimes Randle will play the 5, and if he does, he's going to have Plumlee on him. Plumlee's actually a very good defender, so I do worry a little bit there. But I like Plumlee. I know, going back to Plumlee, I like Plumlee. I know it's not an ideal spot. I just got done preaching to you about not taking big men on back-to-back. But Plumlee's pretty young, and he's not scoring dependent, and that's why I think it's okay. He's not scoring dependent. He plays defense. He gets some assists. He gets rebounds. He gets some points. So I think Plumlee's in play, and his price isn't going to hurt you. If he puts up 30, you're okay. You're not doing so bad. It's 6,300 on FanDuel. All right, moving on to the game I skipped. San Antonio Spurs at Denver, 213 total. San Antonio favored by 7. Fareed is questionable. That's the only injury that I know of. So let's start with Sacramento. Kawhi is obviously in another good spot. Don't see who's going to stop him. Denver is not a good defensive team. Aldridge is in a pretty good spot. Don't see who's going to stop him unless because they'll have Jokic on Gasol. So even Parker's in a good spot. Tony Parker, who doesn't really produce much. I mean, I'm not crazy about Parker, but maybe in cash, if you're looking for a punt option, if he's cheap enough, go for it. But he's in a good option. Who's going to stop him? Moutier? Jameer Nelson? San Antonio, what are you going to do? They're all in good spots. You have to worry about a blowout. The totals, the line's only 7. You still got to worry about a blowout. The total's pretty high considering it's a San Antonio game, so that's interesting. But I think if you're going to take San Antonio, you kind of know where you're going. You can even throw Gasol in the mix, but there's really only 4 guys you're interested in. Really 3 guys. Gasol, Kawhi, and Aldridge are the only guys people are ever interested in. They're all priced up, though. On the Denver side, Barton, very interesting in GPPs. His minutes have been inconsistent, so I don't trust him in cash. But San Antonio has been struggling against the shooting guard position. So Barton in GPPs and Harris in cash would be my way to go. Gary Harris in cash, Will Barton in GPPs. Just my opinion. Moutier is interesting. Moutier is interesting, but I think I'm off. And then Jokic, as long as he can stay out of foul trouble, he's just a beast. I'm a little worried about Aldridge and Gasol clogging up that hole, down low for him, but still in play. I mean, I don't say he cannot, you can never really rule a guy like him out. He's offensive machine. But that's going to pretty much do it for us. If you like the video, please subscribe on Podbean, iTunes, or YouTube, whichever way you're watching it today. Listening to it today. We appreciate you being with us. Obviously, we're trying to build something big here. We're trying to build a nice little community. Please, if you're not a member of WiseTake.com, go to WiseTake.com and register now. Membership is free. We have a lot of free tools for you to use on there. We got a forum on there to interact with other players. You could always reach out to me personally on Twitter at CK_013. That's CK_013. Of course, the WiseTake Twitter at Wise_Take. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Feel free to comment. Give me some feedback. If there's anything you want me to hit up on the next podcast or the next video, let me know. I got some videos in the works. I'm going to try to do a GPP construction video, kind of showing you how to do GPP lineup. But that's pretty much it for me. Thanks for listening, and good luck.